Thanks for staying with us here on Fox 9 all day. I want to talk about a case from February. In February, a truck driver was pulled over by the Iowa State Patrol for failing to stop at a weigh station. He was then taken into custody by ICE during what has been called Operation Ice Wall. Now, the driver's name is Siraj Vasal, and his attorney, Al Smith, is joining us now this afternoon to discuss this case, which might be similar to what some other drivers are now experiencing. Al, we appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let's start here, because from our understanding, ICE has been making arrests at truckers' weigh stations there with the help of Iowa State Patrol. Your client being one of them, can you just kind of give us a timeline and start by what happened on this day, I believe February 11th, right?
Yeah, so I mean, Operation Ice Wall has been in effect, as far as I know, since November of last year. And basically, it's the same thing that happened in this case, is that there's a weigh station violation. The trucker gets pulled over, and then they start working on checking on their immigration status. If they're ever an immigrant that has entered without inspection, then they detain them, and I believe that they detain them no matter what they did, regardless of the weigh station violation, because they often detain the backup drivers that are with them within the truck. And that's what happened with Mr. Vasal.
And what is his legal status?
Mr. Vasal had work authorization and was asking for asylum, and his asylum proceedings are still pending. Right now, what we're really fighting in the federal court is whether he needs to be detained and whether he's subject to mandatory detention.
Okay, and there is some sort of timeline here too, Al, right, from when he was in jail, because toward the end, I think, of February, a district judge gave immigration court about 7 days to provide him with a hearing, and then a few days later, he did receive that hearing, though, but there was some sort of short timeline, right?
Right, and so I'm only his attorney in federal court, but we, under the statutory arguments, he was granted a bond hearing, and that's been very common, and when they gave him the bond hearing, he did not know that he was going to have the bond hearing, and they took him before an immigration judge with 30 minutes notice before he had the time to contact his counsel for the immigration court proceeding. That attorney had been told there had been no hearings that day, and then they proceeded through with the hearing without him having his counsel to argue that he was not a flight risk.
What made you look at this case and say, we have a case here?
Well, honestly, I think a lot of immigrants have cases here. Right now, they're trying to detain anyone who has entered without inspection and subject them to mandatory detention. In most circuits, they have had a lot of success with the statutory argument that actually they are entitled to bond hearings. And even within some circuits that are unfriendlier to immigrants, like the Fifth or the Eighth Circuit, we've been winning due process arguments that said, well, due process requires that these people be have hearings.
And how often I just kind of want to know about, how your days are going in your line of work, and when we think about how often you're seeing maybe immigration cases, because as you would know, in the Twin Cities, we had Operation Metro Surge, and it was all we were seeing at that point. And of course, some of that has died down as far as what we are visually seeing, but many cases, as you would know, still happening right now. So what does that look like for you?
So a lot of times I'm backing up my brother and sister immigration attorneys in Minneapolis. If their clients are transferred to Nebraska or Iowa and they need someone to file something here, then I try and help them out the best that I can or serve as local counsel. But we also have our own share of immigrants that are being detained, and we have to keep on filing these federal habeas petitions when, a year ago, they would obviously be entitled to a bond hearing. That's changed under the Trump administration. So we have to keep going to federal court, so much so that the federal judges are almost kind of sick of us because we have so many cases, but we need to file them.
Any stories in particular that stand out to you that you could share?
I mean, the stories that really get me are with this Operation Ice Wall is these are people that work for a living. These are people that have work authorization that our government released into the country, right? And so while they might not have entered with inspection, they work and they live and have liberty at the blessing of our government. And then they're being detained because they decided to change their mind. And that's really not how I think a society of ordered liberty really should maintain itself. And I think that most normal people hearing about this and knowing that these are not criminals, these are normal people, would really be really shocked that they have to fight this hard just to be heard that they're not a flight risk or a danger.
And just this week, Al, we've been seeing more reporting done about more lawsuits filed against the federal government, saying that their rights have been violated. What do you make of that, and have you heard much from the community about that in particular?
Yeah, people contact me all the time about difficulties with their cases. Everything is more difficult now in every aspect that would really, I think, shock the public's conscience. There's special immigrant status for children who have been abandoned or abused by one of their parents, and it's beginning more difficult not to convince ICE not to deport those people or for those children to receive work authorization. It's more difficult for people who haven't done anything at all. They entered lawfully, and then they married a U.S. citizen for them to adjust their status. I think people do want to see people do things the right way, but these are people that have done things the right way, and the current administration is making it almost impossible for them to do so.
And for your client, Siraj Vasal, what's the latest on his case?
Right now, Judge Locher said that, well, they don't have to do a bond hearing at the moment because he originally granted on the statutory argument, but he was very interested in the due process argument. We've submitted briefing to Judge Locher. He's very thoughtful, and I'm sure that he's going to take a good look at all that briefing, but I remain confident that Mr. Vasal will still receive a bond hearing on the due process argument. We've already seen it. I've already started to see at least one judge within Iowa grant habeas on the due process argument, even though the statutory argument has been foreclosed. So I remain confident that Judge Locher will agree.
All right. Last question for you, because I just curious, how many of these cases are you dealing with right now?
Many. Some of the Minneapolis and the Minnesota attorneys have many more than I do, and that's just a process of them all needing to go out there. And I'm very proud of my brothers and sisters in Minneapolis that are fighting the good fight here.
All right, Al Smith, attorney in Iowa. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for joining us. Okay, it is about, we have about 1 more minute until 1 o'clock, but we have to take a break. And then we have to get to our 1 o'clock hour. So we'll be right back. More All Day Live continues next.